Tonight, we begin with a different kind of wilderness. We're diving into what it was actually like to get lost in a medieval forest. Forget the peaceful walks and bird watching. This is about sheer primal disorientation. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just taken one wrong turn off a muddy path. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight, it's the sound, or rather, the lack of it. The familiar crunch of your feet on the man-made path is gone, swallowed by a thick carpet of decaying leaves and soft, wet earth. What replaces it is a low, constant hum of life. Insects drone in your ears, a bird you can't see shrieks once and then falls silent, and the wind doesn't whistle, it sighs through a million leaves overhead, a sound so vast it has no beginning and no end. The air is thick, cool and heavy with the smell of damp rot, blooming fungus, and the sweet, cloying scent of unknown flowers. Light doesn't beam down here. It filters, it dapples, it tricks the eye. One moment you're in a bright patch, the next you're plunged into a deep, root-tangled gloom where shadows seem to move on their own. You take a step and a branch snaps back to whip your face. Another step, and your foot sinks into a patch of mud that releases a gassy, swamp-like sigh. You are no longer a visitor in nature, you are an intruder. And the forest has just noticed, this isn't a park. This is the medieval woods, and you are profoundly, utterly lost. The concept of being lost today means your GPS is buffering. In the Middle Ages, it was a death sentence. There are no trails blazed by park rangers, no signs pointing to the nearest town, no friendly squirrels to guide you home. The paths that do exist are animal trails, worn by boar and deer, leading to water or deeper into the thicket, not to safety. The trees themselves are ancient, gnarled, and overwhelmingly large. They don't grow in neat rows. They crowd together, their branches interlocking like bony fingers, creating a canopy so dense that on an overcast day you can't tell which way the sun is moving. Without the sun, you have no compass. Without a compass, you have no direction. You are adrift in a green sea. Let's talk about that canopy for a second. From the outside, a medieval forest looks like a wall of green. From the inside, it's a multi-layered prison. Above you, the canopy blocks out the sky, a living roof that turns noon into a perpetual eerie twilight. Below that, a tangled mess of younger trees and shrubs fight for the scraps of light, creating a nearly impenetrable secondary wall. At your feet, the undergrowth is a snare of thorns, nettles, and creeping vines that grab at your ankles like desperate hands. Every direction looks identical. That distinctive oak you thought you could use as a marker. You'll see 100 just like it in 10 minutes. Your brain, trained on city grids and street signs, starts to short-circuit. You spin in a circle, heart hammering against your ribs, and every which way you look is just more green, more brown, more shadow. This is the first stage of being lost, the dizzying, stomach-dropping realization that you have no reference point. You are a speck. The forest is infinite. And it's loud. Modern forests can be quiet, peaceful. Not this one. This is a noisy, bustling, and often terrifying metropolis of wildlife. Every rustle in the leaves isn't the wind, it's something. A hedgehog shuffling through the detritus, a snake coiling under a fern, or worse, a wild boar, a creature of pure muscle and tusks that can weigh as much as a man, rooting for food with a low, guttural grunting that seems to come from everywhere at once. You hear the crack of a branch. Was it you? Did you step on it, or was it something bigger stepping nearby, now standing still, watching you? Your imagination, fueled by a lifetime of campfire stories and village lore, begins to paint pictures in the shadows. That gnarled root looks like a twisted face. That moss-covered stone becomes a sleeping troll. The forest isn't just physically vast, it's psychologically immense. It preys on your fear, amplifying every sound, morphing every shape into a threat. The stories you heard back in the village don't seem so silly now. The tales of the green man, a spirit of the woods with leaves for hair. The whispers of will-o'-the-wisps, ghostly lights that lead travelers deeper into bogs to drown. The warnings about wolves, not as the howling beasts of far-off mountains, but as silent, intelligent predators that could be tracking you right now, their paws making no sound on the soft earth. In the village, these were stories to tell over a warm fire. Out here in the deepening gloom, they feel like news reports. The medieval mind didn't see an untamed wilderness as beautiful. They saw it as chaotic, a place outside of God's order, a realm where demons and old gods still held sway. To be lost was to be cast out from the safety of that order, delivered into the hands of something ancient and indifferent. You try to think logically. The sun sets in the west, but you can't see the sun. You remember that moss grows on the north side of trees. You stumble to the nearest trunk, your hands scraping on the rough bark. Moss, it's everywhere. It coats the tree in a fuzzy green blanket, all sides, top to bottom. In the deep, damp heart of the forest, moss doesn't pick a side. It conquers. Another piece of folk wisdom crumbles to dust in your hands. Panic, which was a flutter in your chest, now becomes a cold, solid weight in your gut. You start walking, with no direction, just a desperate need to move. You tell yourself you're going in a straight line. Within 50 paces you're veering around a thicket, ducking under a fallen log, sidestepping a patch of suspiciously soft ground. Without a clear line of sight to a fixed point, the human body cannot walk in a straight line. It just can't. You will inevitably walk in a wide, meandering circle, eventually crossing your own path without even realizing it. The forest isn't just keeping you in, it's actively herding you. The temperature begins to drop. That filtered greenish light is turning a deeper, more ominous blue. Night is coming, and the night in a medieval forest is a different world, a world of absolute blackness and amplified sound. Your day-long anxiety is about to curdle into pure, undiluted terror. You haven't just lost your way, you've lost the light, you've lost the warmth, and you're about to lose your mind. Continuing on, the blue twilight bleeds into a deep, consuming blackness. The temperature plummets, not as a gentle cooling, but as an invasive chill that seeps up from the ground and pours down from the unseen sky. You are now in the belly of the night, and the forest you thought you knew has vanished, replaced by a landscape of pure sound and sensation. The first and most profound change is the loss of sight. You think you know darkness? You know a dark room, a moonless street. This is different. This is a physical substance, a velvet blindness. You hold your hand an inch from your face and see nothing. Not a shape, not a shade of grey, nothing. The world has been erased. Your other senses, now hopelessly overworked, scream conflicting reports to your brain. Every rustle in the leaves is now a monster. The scuttling in the rotten log next to you is definitely a giant, venomous something. Your ears ring in the silence between sounds, a high-pitched whine of your own fear. Then the howl comes. It's far away, a long, drawn-out note that seems to hang in the cold air before fading. It isn't the Hollywood howl of a lone wolf. It's a communication. Another answers, closer this time. They know you're here. You are the interesting new event in their territory. You freeze, not even daring to breathe, becoming a statue in the absolute black. The only thing you can feel is the frantic bird-like flutter of your own heart against your ribs. This is no longer an adventure. This is a vigil. The cold becomes a character in this nightmare, an active participant in your suffering. Your thin linen tunic and leather shoes are a joke. The dampness from the day has soaked into your clothes, and now that moisture turns icy, leaching the body heat from you with ruthless efficiency. You start to shiver. At first it's just a tremble. Soon it's uncontrollable full-body convulsions that make your teeth rattle. You curl into a ball at the base of a large tree, seeking some pathetic semblance of shelter, drawing your knees to your chest. The tree's roots are hard and unyielding, digging into your back and legs. The ground is cold and wet, and you can feel the seep of moisture through your leggings. This isn't just discomfort. This is the first step on a well-worn path to hypothermia. Your thinking grows fuzzy at the edges. The initial sharp panic begins to be replaced by a dull, creeping lethargy. A small, treacherous part of your brain whispers that it would be so easy to just close your eyes, to stop fighting the shivering, to let the cold wrap around you like a blanket. You have to physically shake your head, slap your own face to fight it off. Survival is now an active, conscious rebellion against your own body's desire to give up. Your mind, unmoored from reality by fear and cold, begins to play the greatest hits of medieval folklore. That faint, glowing light bobbing between the distant trees. It can't be a foxfire, a natural phosphorescence from rotting wood. No, it's a will-o'-the-wisp. A malicious spirit leading you to a watery grave. You shrink back, pressing yourself harder against the tree. The sound of something large moving through the undergrowth, probably a deer, becomes the steady, stomping tread of a bear or a wild man, a mythical creature said to haunt the deep wood covered in hair and possessing the strength of 10 men. Every story the village crone ever cackled about now feels like a documentary being filmed live, with you as the star. The forest is no longer just trees and animals. It is a living repository of every collective fear your culture possesses. You are not just lost in a physical space. You are lost in a story, and it's a horror story. Let's talk about thirst. You haven't had a drink since that muddy stream hours ago, and your throat is a dry, cracked riverbed. You remember the sound of water trickling nearby. In the dark, it's the most tantalizing, torturous sound in the world, but to get to it, you'd have to move. You'd have to leave your pathetic little root cradle and stumble blind through a maze of thorns and pitfalls. And what awaits you at the water? In the daytime, you might have seen the animal tracks, the scat, the way the banks were trampled. Now it's just a sound. A boar could be there drinking, a wolf pack could be resting just beyond. The water itself could be stagnant, filled with parasites that will give you cramps that make childbirth feel like a mild inconvenience. So you sit, and your thirst grows. Your tongue feels thick and fuzzy. You try to swallow and can't. This is how the forest breaks you, not with a single dramatic attack, but with 1,000 tiny, accumulating miseries. Then come the sounds you can't explain, a low whispering that seems to come from the leaves above, a child's faint laugh from the deep blackness to your left. You clamp your hands over your ears, but the sounds are inside your head now, born of exhaustion, dehydration, and primal fear. Are you hallucinating? Probably. Does that make it any less real to you? Absolutely not. This is the psychological torture of absolute isolation. There is no one coming for you. No search party with torches, no drone with a thermal camera. The village world has ceased to exist. You are alone in the oldest, darkest place on Earth, and the entities that live here, real or imagined, are starting to introduce themselves. Time loses all meaning. An hour feels like a lifetime. The night feels eternal. You drift in and out of a tense, shivering half-sleep, jolted awake by every snap and rustle, your muscles cramp from cold and immobility. The small cuts and scratches on your hands and face from your earlier thrashing through the brush begin to sting and throb, feeling inflamed and hot to the touch despite the chill air. Infection is now a future problem, if you have a future. Dawn is a theoretical concept, a fairy tale you no longer believe in. The forest has won. It has stripped you of your direction, your warmth, your water, and now your sanity. You are just a body, huddled in the dark, waiting for an end you can no longer clearly envision. The night isn't a passage of time, it's a state of being, and you are truly, deeply in it. As the first faint grey light bleeds back into the world, it doesn't bring hope. It brings clarity, and clarity, in your current state, is a fresh form of torture. The night's terrifying shadows shrink back into mere trees and bushes, revealing the utter, hopeless sameness of your surroundings. You've survived the dark, but you're still just as lost. Only now you can see the full, sprawling scale of your prison. The dawn chorus of birds that sounds so beautiful from a cottage window is, out here, a deafening alarm bell reminding you that the world has moved on without you. Your body is a wreck. The shivering has stopped, replaced by a deep, bone-aching cold that feels permanent. Every muscle is stiff and screaming in protest, from a night spent curled on roots and stone. The cuts on your arms and face, which you got from thorns yesterday, are now angry red lines, pulsing with a heat that contrasts sharply with your chilled skin. They're infected, of course they are. Your mouth is a desert. Your tongue is so swollen it feels like a foreign object, and your lips are cracked and bleeding. That tantalizing sound of water is now a siren song you can no longer ignore. You stumble towards it, your movements clumsy and slow, like a puppet with broken strings. You don't walk. You lurch from tree to tree, using them for support, your bare hands, now scraped and filthy, gripping the bark for balance. You find the stream. It's not a clear, babbling brook from a fairy tale. It's a sluggish, brown trickle of water cutting through a patch of muddy bog. The banks are churned up with the hoofprints of deer and the unmistakable deep, two-toed slots of a boar. The water itself has a faint, oily sheen to it. You don't care. You collapse onto your knees and plunge your entire face into the liquid cold. It's the most incredible sensation you've ever felt, a momentary bliss that erases everything. You drink until your stomach aches and sloshes, gulping down water that tastes of mud, decay, and things you don't want to imagine. The relief is immediate and profound, and potentially deadly. You've just ingested a cocktail of bacteria and parasites. Dysentery, giardia, any number of microscopic horrors that will, in a day or two, have you vomiting and emptying your bowels until you dehydrate all over again, this time from the inside out. But future you is a problem for future you. Right now, present you is just grateful not to be thirsty. With water sloshing in your belly, a new, more primal urge takes over. Hunger. It's a sharp, gnawing pain in your gut, a hollow feeling that seems to expand with every minute. You look around. The forest is full of life, which means it's full of food. You just have no idea what any of it is. That bright red berry cluster looks juicy and tempting. Is it food? Or is it a one-way ticket to convulsions and your organs shutting down? That mushroom looks like the ones the village wise woman sometimes used. Or was it the one she said would make you see the devil before you died? You have no knowledge. You are a product of a specialized society. You know how to thresh wheat, maybe how to mend a net. You don't know which tree bark can be chewed for sustenance, which grubs under a log are safe to eat. Your stomach cramps, a sharp, stabbing reminder of your ignorance. You end up chewing on a piece of bland, stringy inner bark from a young tree. It's like eating soggy, flavorless cardboard, but it gives your jaw something to do and tricks your stomach for about 5 minutes. Now, with the sun properly up, you make your second big mistake. You decide to be logical. You pick a direction, let's say, where the sun is rising, and you start walking with determination. You're going to walk in a straight line until you find a road, a river, a farm, anything. You break a small branch every so often to mark your path, a clever trick you think you invented on the spot. For the first hour it feels good. You're moving. You're doing something. The forest seems to thin a little. Is that a path? Your heart leaps. It's just a dry riverbed. You press on. Another hour. The terrain changes, becomes hillier, the trees thicker. You start to tire, the initial burst of energy from the water long gone. Your infected cuts throb with every step, and then you see it. Ahead, on a familiar-looking oak tree, is a broken branch, a very specific freshly broken branch, your branch. You've been walking for 2 hours in a wide, meandering circle, and you're right back where you started, near the boggy stream. The psychological blow is worse than any physical hunger. It deflates you completely. All that effort, all that pain, for nothing. The forest isn't just vast, it's actively looping you back on itself, like a cat playing with a mouse before the kill. This is the true cruelty of the second day, the false hope, the energy expended for zero gain. You sink down against the very tree you marked hours ago, the will to move draining from you like water from a cracked cup. The sun, which you prayed for all night, now beats down, hot and mocking. Flies, drawn to the sweat and the filth and the faint smell of your infected wounds, begin to orbit your head in a lazy, buzzing cloud. You're too exhausted to even swat them away. They land on your lips, your eyes, drinking the moisture you so desperately need. You are a piece of meat, slowly spoiling in the green gloom. The hunger is a constant ache. The thirst is returning, sharper than before. And the realization dawns that you are not going to find your way out. You are going to die here. Your bones will bleach in this leaf litter, and the wolves and the bugs will pick you clean, and no one will ever know what happened to you. The forest has won. It has broken your body, and now it's shattering your spirit. All you can do is sit and wait for the second night to come and finish the job. From the crushing realization that you've walked in a circle, there is no bounce back. The last shred of hope evaporates, leaving behind a hollow metallic taste of acceptance. You don't get up from the base of that tree. The fight is gone. Your body is a collection of screaming complaints, the deep ache of hunger, the fiery throb of infection, the leaden weight of exhaustion, and you no longer have the will to tell it to be quiet. You are just a thing that exists here now, a temporary feature of the landscape, like a particularly sad rock. This is when the forest truly starts to absorb you. The flies that were an annoyance become a constant presence. They crawl over your skin, drink from the corners of your eyes, explore your open wounds without a hint of fear. You lack the energy to shoo them away. An ant colony, sensing a large stationary source of something, begins a reconnaissance mission up your leg. You feel the tiny, tickling pinpricks of their feet through your leggings, but it feels distant, like it's happening to someone else. The world begins to narrow to the small patch of dirt between your feet. You stare at it, mesmerized by a beetle struggling to roll a ball of dung. Its life, its purpose, is so simple and clear. You envy the beetle. Your own thoughts have started to unravel, becoming loose and slippery. You try to remember the face of your spouse, your child, but the images are blurry, superimposed with the patterns of moss on the tree in front of you. The past, the village, the fire, the taste of bread, feels like a story you were once told, a faint and increasingly unbelievable dream. The hunger has moved beyond a sharp pain into a dull, constant emptiness that seems to fill your entire body. It's no longer a demand for food, it's a state of being. Your vision occasionally swims, little black dots dancing at the edges. You find yourself staring at a patch of mushrooms, not with caution but with a detached curiosity. What would it feel like? Would it be quick? The civilized part of your brain, the part that knows about poison, is too weak to argue. The animal part, the part that just wants the gnawing to stop, is in control. You reach out a grimy, trembling hand and pluck one. It's pale and fleshy. You bring it to your mouth. It tastes like damp earth and nothingness. You swallow, you wait. Nothing happens immediately, so you eat another and another. You are no longer making choices. You are following impulses, like a bird pecking at seeds. Thirst returns, more brutal than before. The memory of the muddy stream is a torment, but the stream is 20 paces away, and those 20 paces might as well be 20 miles. The effort required to stand, to walk, to kneel again feels Herculean. So you sit, and you let the thirst parch you from the inside. Your lips are now fully split, a network of painful cracks. Your tongue is a dry, swollen lump. You try to generate saliva, but there is none. This is dehydration setting in for the long haul. Your head begins to pound in time with your heartbeat, a slow, painful drumming against your skull. The forest sounds, which were once so sharp and terrifying, now seem to be coming from the other end of a long tunnel, muffled, distant. The world is slowly turning down its volume on you. As the second day wears on, a strange, unnatural coldness seeps into your core, despite the sun dappling through the leaves. The shivering starts again, but it's different this time, deeper, more rhythmic, and entirely out of your control. This isn't the surface cold of night. This is your body's central furnace sputtering and dying. Hypothermia is taking hold, and it brings with it a bizarre, paradoxical feeling of warmth. A cozy, drowsy sensation spreads through your limbs. It feels nice. It feels like sinking into a warm bath after a long, hard day. This is the most dangerous lie your body will ever tell you. This is the prelude to the end. The frantic fear is gone, replaced by a serene, almost peaceful detachment. The forest doesn't seem so hostile anymore. The trees are just trees. The sounds are just sounds. The buzzing of the flies is almost melodic. You are now fully a part of the food chain, no longer at the top, but somewhere near the very, very bottom. A fox trots past, not 10 feet away. It stops, turns its head, and looks directly at you. Its eyes are sharp, intelligent, and completely devoid of fear or malice. It simply assesses you. It sniffs the air, and then, deciding you are neither a threat nor immediately edible, it moves on. You are scenery. You are furniture. Later, as the light once again begins to fail, a shadow detaches itself from the deeper gloom under the trees. A wolf. It is lean, all sinew and gristle and focused intent. It doesn't growl, it doesn't stalk with dramatic menace. It simply stands and watches you, its head slightly lowered. It knows. It can smell the sickness, the weakness, the surrender. It has all the time in the world. You look back at it and you feel nothing, no terror, no urge to run. There is a strange understanding between you, the hunter, and the given up. This is the natural order. This is how things are supposed to be. You close your eyes. The sounds of the forest fade completely, replaced by a high-pitched ringing in your ears. The last thing you feel is not fear, but a profound, overwhelming tiredness. The last thing you are aware of is the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, a smell that is no longer threatening, but familiar, almost comforting. You have not escaped the forest. You have not conquered it. You have simply become it. The green maze has claimed another soul, and the shadows close in for the final time, not as a threat, but as a welcome. From the silent final acceptance within the forest, we now pull back. The story doesn't end with one person vanishing into the leaves. It ripples outward, a stone dropped into the dark pond of a medieval community, and the waves it creates are made of fear, speculation, and a grim practical finality. The forest may consume the body, but it also consumes the minds of those left behind. Imagine the village a week after you never returned. At first it was worry. Your spouse asked around. The neighbors shrugged. You probably went to the next hamlet to trade, got drunk, and are sleeping it off. But a day becomes 2. 2 becomes 5. The worry curdles into a cold certainty. A small search party is formed. Your kin, a couple of neighbors with stout sticks, trying to project bravery they don't feel. They venture to the forest's edge, the very place you disappeared. They call your name. Their voices are swallowed by the vast, leafy silence. They peer into the gloom, seeing only the first few yards before the green wall becomes impenetrable. Do they go in? Do they risk becoming the next missing name, the next empty chair by the fire? After a few hours of skirting the tree line, shouting until they're hoarse, they turn back. The forest has won again, without even showing itself. It has asserted its boundary, and the message is clear. What goes in doesn't necessarily come out. Back in the village, your absence becomes a story, then a lesson, then a ghost. Your house feels different, empty. The tools you used lie untouched. Your family is now a burden on the community, a widow or widower and fatherless children who will have to be supported by the parish or taken in by relatives. Your disappearance is an economic event, a subtraction from the village's meager labor force. There is sadness, yes, a raw, aching grief. But in a world where death is a frequent visitor, grief is a luxury that can't be afforded for long. Life, hard and unyielding, must go on. The fields won't plough themselves. The cows won't milk themselves. Your memory begins to fade, softened at the edges by the relentless demands of the present. But what happened to you? This is where the human mind, terrified of the void, gets creative. Without a body, there is no closure. Without a witness, there is no truth. So, the village creates its own truth. The stories begin to circulate, whispered at the well, muttered over ale in the tavern. Old Man Hemming, who claims to know the woods better than anyone, will swear he heard the faint ghostly bells of a fairy funeral the night you vanished. You weren't eaten by wolves. You were taken by the Fae, whisked away to their hollow hills for 100 years of dancing. And you'll return one day not a day older. It's a romantic story, a way to soften the brutal, mundane reality of starvation and exposure. Others will tell a darker tale. They'll remember that time you shorted the tithe to the church, or that you argued with the miller over the grind of your grain. Clearly, you were punished, struck down by God for your sins, or perhaps lured off the path by the devil himself, appearing as a beautiful woman or a helpful traveler. Your fate becomes a morality play, a warning to children to be obedient and to adults to be pious. Then there's the more practical but no less terrifying theory. Maybe you weren't lost at all. Maybe you were waylaid by outlaws, desperate men living in the forest's depths, who robbed you and buried your body in a shallow grave. Or maybe it was the wolves. The village storyteller will embellish the tale, giving you a heroic, if futile, final stand against a slavering pack. The truth is, they'll never know. You have become an empty space, and nature and human nature abhors a vacuum. That vacuum will be filled with myth, superstition, and fear. This fear is the forest's most enduring legacy. It isn't just a place of trees, it's a place of stories. It is the "here be dragons" on the mental map of every peasant. It reinforces the social order. Stay on the path. Stay within the sound of the church bells. Stay in the cleared, blessed human world. The forest is the other, the wildness that exists just beyond the feeble light of civilization, a constant reminder of how thin the veneer of order really is. Parents will use your story to keep their children from wandering. Don't go too far, or you'll end up like your name, taken by the forest. Your name becomes a synonym for a bad end. And what of your physical remains? The forest is an efficient and silent recycler. The creatures of the woods, from the lowly beetle to the majestic wolf, are not villains. They are janitors. They are the clean-up crew for nature's grand, unsentimental theatre. The elements break down what the animals leave behind. Rain falls, sun bakes. Fungi and bacteria work their silent, relentless magic. Within a season, perhaps two, there will be very little left to find. A few scattered bones, bleached and gnawed, that will eventually sink into the leaf litter and become part of the soil. A rusted buckle from your belt, maybe, that a future archaeologist will unearth 1,000 years later and puzzle over. You haven't just died, you have been unmade, returned to the system from which you came. This is the final, humbling truth of being lost in the medieval woods. It wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a reaffirmation of the natural order. Humans were guests in that world, temporary and fragile. The forest was permanent, it was patient. It could wait. And every time someone vanished into its green, silent depths, it sent a powerful, unspoken message to every living soul in the village. We have carved out this little space of light and warmth, but the darkness is always right there, waiting. Just beyond the last field, just past the edge of the path. And it doesn't care about your plans, your family, or your name. All it asks is that you take one wrong step. From the silent, efficient recycling of bone and memory, we take one final step back. The story of a single soul lost in the woods is a tragedy. But the story of 1,000, 100,000 lost over centuries? That's not a tragedy. That's a culture. That's a worldview. The ever-present threat of the deep, dark wood didn't just claim individuals. It carved grooves of fear and suspicion into the very bedrock of the medieval mind shadows that stretched long into their art, their laws and their daily routines. Think of the medieval map. It's not an accurate representation of geography, it's a diagram of fear. The known world, the villages, the roads, the cities, are drawn with careful, if clumsy, detail. But between them, vast blank spaces, often filled with elaborate illustrations, not of topographical features, but of monsters. Serpents coil in the uncharted rivers, dragons sleep on mountain ranges. And in the great forests, sketched in the margins, are wild men covered in hair, wielding clubs, or wolves with eyes like burning coals. These weren't just decorative flourishes, they were warnings. Here be dragons, literally. The map said, beyond this point the rules of our world do not apply. Here there be things that will eat you, and we don't know what they are. The forest was the original terra incognita, a psychological and physical frontier that shaped how far people were willing to go and what risks they were willing to take. This fear was codified into law. Forest law, particularly in places like Norman England, was a brutal, separate justice system that treated the king's deer with more respect than it treated peasant children. But the reason these laws could be so harsh and so widely enforced was precisely because the forest was seen as a dark, chaotic place that needed to be tamed by the crown's absolute authority. Poaching a deer wasn't just theft. It was a violation of the royal order, a slip back into the savage chaos the forest represented. The punishment, blinding, mutilation, death, was meant to be so terrifying that it would outweigh the primal fear of the woods themselves. The law used the forest's own reputation as a weapon, making the king's justice seem like the only light in a world of darkness. You feared the king's forester almost as much as you feared the wolf, because both could end you. But the forester would do it slowly and in front of your family. This shadow fell on people too. Those who lived on the forest's edge, the charcoal burners, the hermits, the swineherds who led their pigs to forage on acorns, were viewed with deep suspicion by the village folk. They were the liminal people, the ones who straddled the line between the civilized and the wild. They knew the secrets of the wood. They moved through it without getting lost. How? The village gossip had answers. They must have made a pact. They consort with spirits. They know the old magic, the kind that doesn't come from God. A hermit seeking God in solitude was one thing. A solitary figure who emerged from the trees with a bundle of rare herbs was another. He was either a saint or a witch, and it was usually safer for the village to assume the latter. The forest didn't just hide physical dangers, it hid social ones, breeding distrust for anyone who seemed too comfortable in its embrace. And then there are the stories, the ones that survived long after the specific names of the lost were forgotten. The fairy tales we tell sanitized to children today were, in their original forms, stark warnings born from this specific woods-based terror. Little Red Riding Hood isn't a whimsical story about a girl and a wolf. It's a horror story about the dangers of straying from the path, of talking to strangers, in the woods, of being consumed by the primal predator that lives just out of sight. Hansel and Gretel is a nightmare about parents abandoning their children in the forest because they can feed them, and the even worse witch, a human-shaped perversion of nature that waits deep within to consume them. The forest in these tales is always the antagonist. It's the place of transformation, where you encounter the big, bad wolf, the wicked witch, the gingerbread house of temptation that leads to an oven. These stories were the medieval equivalent of a public safety announcement. Stay on the path. Don't talk to strangers, and for the love of all that is holy, don't go into the deep, dark woods. Even faith was filtered through the leaves. The wilderness was where saints went to be tempted, to face demons, to wrestle with their faith away from the comforts of society. But for the common person, the forest was less a spiritual testing ground and more a spiritual void. Church bells defined the auditory landscape of the village, marking time and offering comfort. Their sound died at the tree line. In the forest, there was no bell, no priest, no Latin liturgy to ward off evil. You were alone with God, yes, but you were also alone with everything else. The cross you wore around your neck might feel a little lighter, a little less potent, when surrounded by ancient oaks that had been growing since before Christ. So, the next time you walk through a managed woodland, a national park with clearly marked trails and the distant hum of a highway, remember the echo. Remember that for centuries, for the vast majority of human history, the woods were not a place of recreation. They were a place of reckoning. They were the dark that snuffed out the candle, the cold that killed the fire, the silence that swallowed the prayer. They were the final formidable argument against human arrogance. We have paved, plotted, and GPS mapped our world into submission. But the medieval forest remains in our collective memory, a deep, green, and terrifying reminder that we are only ever one wrong turn away from being utterly, irrevocably, and terminally lost. From the deep, cultural shadows cast by the ancient woods, we finally return to the light of the present. But the echo remains, a faint, primal tremor in the back of our modern minds. We have paved over the wilderness, mapped every contour, and banished the true dark with electric light, but the ghost of the medieval forest still haunts our stories, our fears, and the way a sudden chill can run down your spine when a tree branch scrapes against a window at night. Think about that feeling. You're in a comfortable, climate-controlled home. You've just watched a horror movie. The credits roll. You get up to get a drink and the floorboard creaks. For a split second, your heart lurches. That's the echo. It's the ancient software of your brain, the part that evolved over millennia of being prey, booting up for one glorious, unnecessary moment. It's the same feeling a medieval peasant got listening to the wolves howl in the distance, only your wolves are fictional, and your forest is a neatly trimmed backyard. We've sanitized the world, but we haven't rewritten our instincts. The fear of the dark, the fear of being watched, the fear of the unknown path, these are all heirlooms from a time when the woods were a very real, very active threat. Your smartphone might have a full battery, but your amygdala is still running a version last updated in 1350. This inherited dread is the lifeblood of our horror. The cabin in the woods trope isn't popular by accident. It is a direct descendant of the medieval fear of the isolated dwelling on the forest's edge. The zombie apocalypse, where civilization collapses and nature begins to reclaim the cities, taps into that same terror of the ordered world being swallowed by the chaotic, hungry wild. The vampire and the werewolf are just polished, aristocratic versions of the forest demon and the beast man of old folklore. They are the civilized perversions of the primal fear that something out there, something that looks almost human, wants to drink your blood or tear you to pieces. We've put them in castles and tuxedos, but their ancestral home is the deep, dark wood. We are still telling the same stories. We've just changed the special effects. Even our language is littered with the fossils of this arboreal terror. Feeling bewildered? That comes from the Old English wilder, meaning to lead astray or lose in the wilderness. To be baffled originally meant to be publicly disgraced, but it evokes the confusion of being lost in a thicket. A quagmire is a boggy piece of ground that can swallow you whole, a very specific forest danger. We use these words every day, completely unaware that we are casually referencing the topographical nightmares of our ancestors. The forest is stitched into the very fabric of how we express confusion and disorientation. And what of our relationship with nature today? We go for hikes. We camp in tents with synthetic materials and chemical warmth. We walk on trails that are maintained by park services, with signs assuring us of the distance to the parking lot. This isn't engaging with wilderness. It's tourism. It's a curated, safe, and temporary visit. The moment that curation fails, the moment the trail marker is missing, the GPS signal drops, the weather turns, the medieval panic can set in with startling speed. The modern hiker who gets lost for a few hours experiences a compressed, frantic version of the multi-day ordeal we've just journeyed through. The terror is the same. The timeline is just mercifully shorter. It proves that beneath our thin layer of technology, we are still the same animals who once huddled in fear of the green unknown. So, the next time you find yourself walking through a beautiful forest, enjoying the dappled sunlight and the birdsong, take a moment to listen for the echo. It's in the way the path seems to bend back on itself when you were not looking. It's in the sudden, silent pause, in the animal noises that makes you stop and hold your breath. It's in the irrational, fleeting thought that maybe you shouldn't venture down that unmarked side trail. That isn't you being silly. That's the ghost of 1,000 ancestors, tugging at your sleeve, whispering the oldest warning they know. Don't go in too deep. Remember what happened to us. The medieval forest is gone, for the most part, but its shadow is long, and it falls across us all. We built our world to keep that shadow at bay, to push back the green wall with concrete and light. But it's still there, in our stories, in our language, in the quickening of our pulse when we're alone in the dark. We conquered the wilderness, but we could never quite conquer the fear it planted in us. That fear is the medieval forest's final enduring victory. It doesn't need to exist physically to rule a part of our psyche. It lives on as a phantom limb of terror, an echo in the blood, a silent reminder that no matter how safe we make the world, we are all, in some deep, ancestral way, just one step away from the path, one mistake away from the green gloom, one wrong turn away from being truly and forever lost.